Next up, we got the team that defeated those Denver Nuggets in the playoffs. That is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, with the loss of Cat, I have a little bit more question marks about this team than I do if they had just decided to run it back with the same roster. But from an on the court and from a business perspective, the move makes a lot of sense because Cat was about to be making $60 million a year, and Julius Randle's going to be making half of that. And he's really a Cat light in terms of his play style, an offensive-minded big man who isn't the best defender and can space the floor. Now, is Cat a better floor spacer than Julius Randle? Absolutely. But I think that Julius Randle will be able to fill in for Cat for the most part. Are there going to be moments where he's kind of a ball stopper and gets in the way Anthony Edwards, like when Rudy Gobert came in his first year, and there was a point where Anthony Edwards couldn't get any dunks off because Rudy was just in the paint the whole time? Yeah, I think there's going to be moments like that, and I think it's more a problem with Julius Randle than it was with Cat. But as the season goes on, I think the Timberwolves will only get better. They might get off to a little bit of a rough start, just some growing pains, but I think ultimately they will be fine. And the big addition for them, in my opinion, is Dante DiVincenzo. I think he's just going to be very valuable. You can, if Mike Conley was to get hurt, you just wanted him to have a lesser role, you could have an Dante DiVincenzo backcourt some nights. I think that's absolutely fine. Dante plays his role perfectly. He's a lights-out shooter, and I think he's a very, very key piece for this team moving forward. Some other guys on this roster, Rudy Gobert is one of the best defenders we've ever seen, and he's got the accolades to back it up. You can say what you want about Rudy. He's a 4-time DPOY now, tied for the most in history. And he's not Dikembe, but he's not Ben Wallace, but he's an elite defender in his own right and one of the best defensive anchors that we have seen in modern NBA history. And not just from the post, but on the perimeter, we've got other guys like Jaden McDaniels and Nikola Alexander-Walker, who are just elite defenders. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA. No doubt. His defense is great. And it's funny because when Nickeil came into the league, that was kind of seen as his negative. He wasn't the best defender. He was an offensive-oriented player. And he's completely shifted that narrative and done what he has needed to do to be a solid, impactful player in the league, and that is locking on the defensive end. And he's also a really solid offensive player. Nickeil's great. But Jaden McDaniels especially, he just made his first all-defensive team this past year, and he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. He showed up in the playoffs last year. I think with the loss of Cat, Jaden can take a step up on the offensive end too. Maybe be a 15-point-per-game guy, and I'd love to see that because really he's been a great defender for a long time now, and it's just a matter of him getting the offensive game going. And speaking of offensive game, how about Naz Reid? Julius Randle's going to be taking up that starting spot. But Naz Reid, he won Sixth Man of the Year last year. There's no reason he can't be a very impactful sixth man this year. He plays really similar to Cat, actually. So, even if we didn't get Julius back, guess what? We would have saw Naz Reid in that, and it would have been all right. And Naz Reid, he's a little bit of a meme, right? But Minnesota fans loves him, and there's a reason for that. They've watched this guy grow up. He's now the longest tenured player for the Minnesota Timberwolves. And he's grown into his own as a player. He's a really good offensive player. And we saw a lot better defense from him last year. I think that can absolutely continue. And Naz Reid's going to be a very important piece of this team. And lastly, Anthony Edwards. He's ready to lead his team into contention. I've got no doubt that Anthony Edwards can be the number one option on a championship team. And that you ask him, I'm sure he has all the confidence in the world that he can be that too, and that's what he's going to look to do. I think another year for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't think this is their year because I think there's going to be some growing pains with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, but I think they will absolutely be in the running to be a contender. And the year after this, I could absolutely see them winning the championship, but it could certainly come earlier this year as well. If you enjoyed this video, it would be great if you could find it in you to like, subscribe, maybe check out the full podcast on Spotify. Follow us on there. Follow us on Instagram. I know realistically this podcast isn't going to go anywhere ultimately, whether it's via the segments on YouTube or the entire podcast itself. But I want to get into the sports broadcasting business. I want to be able to promote thought-provoking discussions about the NBA, and I would love to do it via State of the Association. Thank you if you made it all the way through.